So good afternoon, everyone. A very warm welcome to our first Science Hour, our first EERIE Science Hour, which is a new format. Okay, I mean that's something we promised when we drafted the proposal, and we promised something, I think 40 during the whole project. So it's pretty much one Science Hour per month. And what we decided basically is to use the first couple of Science Hours to get ourselves prepared for the upcoming hackathon in November in Bremerhaven, that, as you know, will be following directly after our General Assembly. And I think a few of you may have attended already hackathons. I mean, we had a number in sort of related projects, and I think it's becoming increasingly clear that if you really want to have a productive hackathon, one of the most important elements is to get really people prepared before they arrive. I mean, if you need to learn the system and how to log in and stuff, at the hackathon, then not much will be coming out in terms of science and so forth. So the idea was to, as I said, to use the first few Science Hours in order to introduce different elements that are of relevance to the hackathon, but not just the hackathon. I think this is about the project in general, because this is a project which is about models, about analyzing model data, and therefore I think it's of interest very well beyond the hackathon. Yeah, I mean, basically you could say the preparation, I mean, certainly of the hackathon is starting today with this first Science Hour. Before I hand over to Malcolm, who will be hosting this here today, I would just briefly mention that we are going to record this, okay? And the idea is to provide the same information also to people that may start a little bit later, actually. I mean, there are still hires ongoing. And there may also be a chance that some also others may not have the time to come today. And sometimes it's just nice to listen again to a certain part, and just being able to rewind can be a distinct advantage. So revisiting material that has been presented before. So I hope that that is fine by everyone. Otherwise, please make yourself known right now. I think everyone is fine with the recording. So then, yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining. And we are very much looking forward to our first EERIE Science Hour. And with this, I hand over to Malcolm. Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Yes, welcome, everyone. So Science Hour might be a slight misnomer this time, and that it's more about kind of the platform, as in JASMIN, that will hopefully help us do some really great science. And mostly what I'm doing here is going through some introduction to JASMIN information that John Seddon put together earlier this year, I guess. And also it links to a lot of documentation that the JASMIN team have up on their website. So there's not much original from me, but I can kind of go through some of the aspects of getting onto JASMIN, using JASMIN, some of the things that you might want to do on JASMIN, where some of the data is, and hopefully you can ask questions and kind of figure out any uncertainties. So please, if you have a question, shout, because I'm on full screen, so I won't see any hands or anything. So if you have a question, just shout it out, and I will pause and take it. Otherwise, I will go. So yes, so welcome everyone to this first Science Hour. So as you know, EERIE is funded both by the EU, by some UK and some Swiss funding. And so this is going to be a regular slot, kind of more or less every Thursday of the month. The next one at the end of July, Fabi is going to be talking about Levante and easy gems, and then the one after that will be Nikolai on using IFS FISM and ICON data. So those are the next two. Stick them in your diaries. And for those of you, if there are any non-EERIE people here today, just to remind you that EERIE is trying to look into the role of the ocean mesoscale in global weather and climate on a centennial timescale. So that's what we're trying to do. So that's kind of where we're trying to take our research, not science. Okay, so on to CEDA JASMIN. So the JASMIN platform is funded by UKRI in the UK, and the CEDA JASMIN team are a part of the EERIE project. So we have people who are funded a little bit, at least, by UKRI, as it happens in the UK, for the project to help us use JASMIN as one of our central places to do our collaborative analysis on multi-model data sets, much like we did in Primavera, but it's only one of possibly 2 or 3 platforms that we'll use this time. Yeah, and then as Thomas said, it'll be one of the platforms again that we use for our hackathon during the General Assembly in November. So kind of on to some initial aspects of JASMIN. So if you've seen in the chat, so I posted a link. So Javi kindly uploaded my slides from this morning. So there'll be some subtle differences, what I show now. But so there's the PDF is there, so you can download that and kind of get all the links and things that are in this document. But much of what I'm going to say about EERIE, as I say, was from some things that John Seddon put together. And if I get that a bit bigger. So John put together this really nice kind of list of instructions. So basically this will be some of the things that I'll go through today. But then here is more detail about how to, yep, someone? That a question? No, okay. So there's kind of more detail than I have in my slides about some aspects of JASMIN, how to apply for an account, how to use the JASMIN storage, the extra services, and some other things. So that's all available through that link to GitHub page that John set up. So if you want more information, then that's a really good place to start. In terms of how to get an account, how to get an account and things. So if I just tell you some information, so what does Nikolai say? Oh, I can't.
We can discuss it in the end. Sorry, Michael. I'm just...
Yeah. Okay. So once you apply, when you apply for an account, an email comes to I think both John and myself. So when you apply for the account, if you put a little bit of explanation, I'm working on EERIE, I'm going to do these things, then CEDA JASMIN email the 2 of us, and one of us will approve the account. So you get some home disk space. It's about 100 gig of home disk space. JASMIN has group workspaces, so these are kind of where you want to put more permanent data sets. The access speeds are not so good to the group workspaces, so it's kind of a place where you'd put data sets to keep them a bit longer rather than something that you're doing kind of processing on. EERIE as a whole has about 250 terabytes of group workspace disk space for the project and about 50 terabytes for object store. So it's not huge when you think of the many petabytes of data that we're going to produce. So we'll have to be careful and kind of make sure that we're, not one user doesn't kind of use up the whole disk space, but hopefully there is enough for us use the group, as they use the group workspace, the kind of final aspects of a calculation, having done lots of the large data processing on one of the scratch disks or something. So, but that's just to kind of let you know a bit how the data structures work on JASMIN. There's also tape archive, which I won't talk about today because it's a bit more complicated, and John is definitely the expert on that. So when he's back in August, if you have any questions on using the tape archive, then he's a good person to ask. And the group workspace path is simply this path name is where the EERIE directory, and then you can create subdirectories from that directory if you want to create your own, or I've so far tried to create subdirectories that are kind of model outputs or something like that. So it's fairly obvious what's contained in the directories. And to request permission to access one of these group workspaces, you go to this link, or you go to the kind of Jasmine accounts page, go to group workspaces, and then search on EERIE, and then click apply. And again, there's an email that comes to John and me, and we can just click approved, and we can approve you for a few years of access to the group workspace. So that's kind of how the disk space works. So on CEDA JASMIN hosts the UK ESGF node. So all of the CMIP5 and CMIP6 data on ESGF, at least the data that's been replicated to the Jasmine node, is available on disk through this link here. So basically, if you ls there'll be a CMIP6, or there's a high-res, there's a high-res MIP, there's a CMIP6. There's some extra Primavera data that we did for kind of higher frequency outputs. So it's all within that directory structure. And I say that's all on disk. So you could just read that straight in to your code or whatever. You do need to do something in order to access this. It's not just getting your Jasmine account. You have to do something a little bit extra, which is documented in John's instructions. You kind of have to link kind of your CEDA account to your Jasmine account to get that permission set up. But it's really very straightforward and easy. And then you have effectively the whole of the CMIP5 and CMIP6 archive available to you on disk there. The Jasmine services, so to log on to Jasmine, once you have an account, you basically log on to the login server, of which this is the kind of more generic one, which doesn't need whitelisting of where you're coming from. So you just put in your username at login2, and then that will log you in, and that will then show a list of the interactive analysis servers, of which there are 8. They're basically the same, but some of them have more memory available than others. And obviously, depending on how many users are on each individual analysis server, you might want to pick one that has a lower load or that has the more memory that you need or whatever. But there are just 8 to choose from. They're basically all the same. So then you SSH into one of those size servers. So the analysis servers are more for interactive work, for kind of small scale stuff, maybe for testing your scripts and things. They're not really, they shouldn't be. Some people do this, but they're not really for long, intensive running of scripts that will use up big amounts of CPU and will make all the other people who are trying to log on to your server trying to use it properly. So once you have something working, then you should use the batch cluster, which I'll talk about in a minute. But there are those servers to kind of do the lighter stuff and to do testing and things. And I say they have more or less. So some of them have a very big amount of memory. So if there's something you need to test first before you put it on the cluster and to check that it works, then you can pick a server that has a really big memory if you need that. So the Lotus batch cluster is about a 19,000 core batch serving system. It uses Slurm for the queues to submit the jobs to the queues. There's a bunch of different queues and things that you can use. Maybe if I go to the link, may not be very useful, but going to this link, it will kind of tells you all about the queues and things. But if I click on the queues, then assuming you can more or less see this, there's a test queue, which is kind of for short 4-hour jobs. So if you have really small jobs, that's a pretty quick turnaround. They'll get into there and run pretty quickly, you know. But if you have a very high memory or a very long job, then you'll pick one of the longer queues. It might take longer to actually start running in the queue, but then will kind of run for however long you need. So yeah, so the test queue is 4 hours all the way up to the longer queues, many days if you have very long processes, or if you need high memory or something. So there's kind of range of queues, and you should kind of pick the right queue based on kind of what you're trying to do, what time and memory and stuff that you need. But it's a good system. I think they've kind of just upgraded that, so hopefully your kind of jobs won't be hanging around for too many hours or days before they run. But you know, please play around, test. Think something's wrong, then the support at Jasmine are very reactive. They're very good at kind of replying if you have an issue, if you think something's going wrong. There's also an experimental GPU cluster on Jasmine. You have to, at the moment, you have to register, so that's not something. So Lotus, is basically part of your account. You can submit to Lotus. If you want to use the GPU cluster, you have to, at the moment, do a separate registration. But obviously, if there are things that your analysis or other things need GPUs or will be good on GPUs, then please go ahead. I have no experience of that queue, but it's there if you want to try that out. And then, as I say, there's, as well as the group workspaces that I talked about, there's various other places for kind of writing files. Again, this is probably a bit small, but there are kind of Scratch workspaces. Oops, probably the 2 and 3, and there are some that are good for if you're doing parallel write on the things that you're running on Scratch. Or if you're not doing parallel write, then you should use the no PW one. But they're kind of fairly big in terms of the amount that you can have on them at any one time. But they do get, the Scratch disks do get tidied up. I think you can have data around for a month or so, I think, and then it's at danger of being deleted. So again, it's kind of for processing, doing stuff, and then you put your final answer on the group workspace if you want to keep it after your processing. So maybe if I pause there and kind of take any questions you have so far, and then I'll carry on. Don't have any questions? No? I will carry on.
I had a question. With regards to
Well, it was more just a comment that we can move we have now the EERIE organization on GitHub. We can move John's comments there, but I mean that's
yes, that's true. Yep, that's a very good point. Yep, yeah, we should do that. Okay. So carrying on that. So software. So there's a bunch of kind of standard software. Python. There's R. There's various other software available on Jasmine, and if you want access to kind of standard Python things, standard Python libraries, say some of the extra software or R programming language, then you just do module load, JasPy or Jasmine Sci or JasR, and it will load up the environment that gives you access to all of those things. There are particular versions, so there are particular kind of JasPy dash and a date that will have been a particular version of Python, Python 3.8 or 3.9 or 3.10. If you want to pick a particular version of Python that you were using and you want to kind of stick exactly the same, then they save the last few environments because they update it every few months or so. So there's a kind of history, somewhat of a history of those environments. So that kind of gives you the standard set of software. There is an ESMVal tool module as well, I think. So again, all the information on how to load up ESMVal module and have access to that software is available under that link. If you need to have your own software, so if there is software available under a pip install or under Conda environments elsewhere, so for example, if anyone is aware from our Mattermost, I've been doing some eddy tracking on Jasmine from some data that Deanne and Nikolai have given me, and so that was a pip install of PY Tracker, and so I think I followed the second one of these links. So you kind of create a Conda environment, you activate the Conda environment, then you can do pip install and whatever software you want. And if there are, you know, particular Python environments that you need with that, and then you can just install that as an environment, and then you can do a module load of the environment that you've just created, and that will give you access to the software that you wanted. So it's a relatively straightforward. Again, the documentation here is pretty straightforward to use in terms of you do a wget on the Conda stuff, you activate it, and then you can use pip and things to install whatever you like. So so it's fairly straightforward to install kind of standard software packages and things. I can, if you have questions about that, I can try and help. Or again, the Jasmine team are very good, or John when he's back in August. And then yes, I'm coming near to the end. So Jasmine have hosted previous CMIP6 hackathons, and again under this link, there's a bunch of resources from those previous hackathons. Kind of probably much the same information I've just gone through, but just some getting started. There are some example notebooks, as well as, I think it showed somewhere, there's, if you dig there a bit deeper, there's some of the CMIP6 hackathons, the notebooks and things and results that people produced, they then archive to a GitHub account, and so they're available. Those notebooks and things are available to kind of copy and download and use, and that will give you kind of, so it can give you the first start with X-Array and stuff. It can get you loading some of the CMIP6 data if you want to do that as a start with a notebook. So those resources are there, so I'd say including Jupyter notebooks. I think our plan pre the hackathon is maybe to put together some basic Jupyter notebooks for people just to get used to, you know, how to use the system, where the data is and things, and then people can go from there. This probably is more for the hackathon, things we need to consider, like as I say they did for the CMIP6 hackathons, is commit code and things that you develop during the hackathon to our GitHub. Kind of identify some figures that we can showcase and store any data that we produced in the group workspace. So there's a notebook service that Jasmine have. So again, it's just a question of opening a browser on your window and logging into the Jasmine portal that hosts the notebook server. You can there's a few different Python environments, or there's an environment that includes the JASPI environment here that can automatically be loaded into your notebook in order for you to use matplotlib, whatever other standard things to use. And then again, kind of looking forward to a hackathon. So the Met Office has a fast data link from our mass data archive to Jasmine. So it should be fairly straightforward pre the hackathon to either pre-upload any data that we produced from our model by then to Jasmine fairly quickly, hopefully summarized data as well pretty quickly. So that link is really fast. So that's good. Then just a bit looking to the future. So the data management tool is again something that we await for John to come back to, but for those who are unfamiliar, so this is something that we did for Primavera. So it's kind of a tool. So you can effectively search under whatever kind of names you want. And what it did, it enabled us to identify during Primavera whether particular data. So in Primavera, we uploaded all of our data to Jasmine, and then gradually put it onto tape and gradually Seymorized it and put it into the ESGF archive. And the data management tool was a way of us identifying whether data was already on disk or if it was on tape, so that we could get it back onto disk from tape if you needed it. So searching on various things, it would tell you what's available, the experiment, the MIP table, where that variable was, be it that it was in, this happens to be our mass archive, or if it was on probably some, should be some, if it was in the ESGF archive or whatever. But it allowed us then not to have multiple copies of particular data sets on disk. So this managed stuff that was on tape, put it onto disk. And so if someone else wanted that data, they could search for it and see it was already on disk with this path, and they could read it from there. So it was a way of managing our disk space. And definitely there's potential to do something similar with EERIE, particularly with our smaller data space that we have available. And then potentially we can use it to identify where data is on DKRZ or elsewhere, and then either have something within the DMT that can pull that data from DKRZ, or at least you can identify the data is at this path at DKRZ and go away and maybe run your script there instead. So that's kind of that. We haven't firmed up exact plans of what we're going to do with the data management tool, because that's John's baby. But we will figure that out when he comes back. Yep. And then Pablo is going to have a tutorial session in September for using the ESGF portal. So I like the DMT as a kind of interface to searching for data. I've always struggled with using the ESGF portal to search for data very easily. But Pablo is going to have a tutorial session on doing that in September. So if anyone is interested in that, then you should tune in. You should tune into that. And that is all I have. That was all I was going to present on Jasmin. So I will stop sharing and invite any questions. Yeah, Wilfried.
Yes, thank you for this very interesting presentation. About the environment in JASMIN, I wonder if it is possible to upload the code you have wrote on your own computer into the system and run it.
Hold on a minute. I'm struggling to hear you, so I'm going to put my headphones on.
Okay.
I think it's also on my side. It was a bit difficult to understand.
I'll see if the headphones help.
Okay, let me remove my video and see if you get me better.
Okay, that's I can hear a bit better.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, a bit better.
Yes, and I was asking, is it possible in JASMIN to upload a code that you wrote? For example, it could be in NCL or another programming language. Is it possible to write it on your computer and to upload it into JASMIN and maybe change the directory to the data and run it?
So I don't use NCL, so I'm not entirely sure whether NCL is available on Jasmin. So there are some Matplotlib kind of needs a license, and I think that's definitely not available on Jasmin. So I mean, if it was tools that you could as I suggested, kind of download as a pip install or something, then you can kind of install that yourself. But yeah, if it's tools that need a license, then no, you can't do that. Was that what you were asking? Was it something different?
No, it was exactly what I asked.
Okay. John, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, and also it's also very easy to write software on your own computer and just do SCP it to the login server into your home directory. and then you can run any software, and you can even use some modern editors will automatically copy files from your local computer to your home directory in Jasmine via SCP. So you can write software locally and it will copy it to the thing. And yeah, I think, as Malcolm said, there's no MATLAB license, but I'm not sure about NCL. If NCL isn't commercial, then I think NCL may be installed at Jasmine already.
Okay.
Yes, NCL is
We
there
can
in
definitely look
Jasmine.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Okay. I think Nikolai was next.
Yeah, the question is about the data that located in Jasmine. Do you have any plans to try the intake catalogs that proven to be quite quite helpful for things that we were doing with NextGems? If this is something on the horizon that you have, or you prefer not to go into this?
So, so I think we have talked with Nick and Fabi, and Fabi can maybe correct me because I definitely know nothing about intake catalogs. That there's potential, yes, that we might be able to do something with those on our side. So I think the Iris, so we tend to use Iris rather than XArray, is not very well set up for intake catalogs, but we potentially
I think you can do the I think you can do the driver for Iris, and it should not be such a big of a, we can discuss this maybe offline, but if we will come up with at least like unified way to access the data inside the scripts,
search it.
that would make our life much easier. If we will have different, well, I mean, that's something that we have to discuss. Before that.
Fabi, did you?
Definitely.
Oh yeah, sorry, go on, John.
Yeah, definitely. Intake's very commonly used, so they definitely will try and look at intake and either make our data available via intake or and transport intake as much as we can. So yeah, we did definitely understand that, and we'll try our best. We don't have much experience. Well, Metos doesn't have that much experience, but certainly Jasmine do. So we'll try our best to support that.
Fabi, was there anything else to say? No?
Yeah, of course. At DataSet, we have intake catalogs, so we can support you in creating catalogs.
Okay. I didn't notice whether it was Deanne or Rohit next, so whichever one, please go ahead.
He had his hand up first.
Yeah, okay, so when I was working on University of Reading, I used to use the university VPN to log into Jasmine. I was just wondering if I missed the information, if we need some VPN, some kind of VPN to connect to Jasmine this time, or it will be just fine.
No, so I think
you don't. I'll get you on, Michael. Yeah, you don't need any VPN. You can just, as long as you use login to .jasmine, then you should be able to SSH in from any host on the internet. So yeah, no need for any VPN. Yeah, as long as you use login to .jasmine, I think login1.jasmine would require a VPN, but login 2 is available from anywhere on the internet. It has slightly more difficult to work with, but yeah, there's no need to use a VPN.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Deanne?
Yeah, I think it goes along the line with the catalog system. So it's the idea that for the data that you guys have, it's not that each of us keep downloading it onto Workspace, right? I assume that if we're searching for the data, it goes into some common pool that if it's already on disk, and then others can access it too. Is that the idea? And how? Sorry, maybe because I haven't used the system in a long time, I couldn't remember how to actually access the data, because it's the query just tells us if the data is if there's data available, right? But it doesn't.
So
yeah.
So for the Primavera DMT, then it told you where the data is, and if it was on tape, it enabled you to download it from tape to disk. So you kind of pressed a button and said, I want this on tape, on disk, please, and it would pull it back from tape to disk. But if it was already on disk, then it would tell you it's already there. For the data management tool for EERIE, I will leave for John to say.
Yeah. Definitely, we don't want users downloading data themselves. We want to have just a single copy of data on disk to make more efficient use of disk spaces. So we'll provide a tool to let you know where data is and to allow data to be placed on disk in a known location that other users will know where the data is to make maximum use of our limited disk space.
But in terms of if there's data, you know, if you're working on Jasmine, but the data is at DKRZ, I think the idea is ideally that the data management tool will definitely know where the data is. Whether we put capability within the data management tool to allow you to replicate the data from DKRZ to Jasmine, or whether we just say it's a DKRZ and, you know, run your same script there. I think we haven't decided yet. Is that true, John?
Yeah, I think that's still to be
We need to
decided.
figure that out. Yeah,
the most efficient way of making data interoperable, but minimizing disk space. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. That's good. It's good to know, because I think we at some point would like to do intermodal comparisons, and so it's quite important to know where the data, or where we can do the analysis, and be it if it has to be done on 2 different machines, so it can be done. It's just curious. But thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Nikolai?
Yeah, we have some limitations on the disk. Do we have some limitations on the compute power, or we can use as much as we want?
We can use as much as we want. Yep.
Yeah, you just submit it to the Lotus queue. So you just put, there's like, I think it's 4,000 nodes, but shared between many users, and there's a fair use to the queue. So if lots of people are submitting lots of stuff, you'll have to wait a bit longer. Yeah, and if we're using too much, we may be asked to, and delaying other users, then we may be asked to be more frugal. But in theory, there is just a queue that we can all submit to.
Yeah, but for post-processing 20,000 cores is pretty good. Yeah, so.
Yeah, so there's no, at least, yeah, as John says, so you submit stuff, it doesn't cost you anything. So once you have an account on Jasmine, then you can use all the Jasmine facilities. So yeah. Yep.
I had another question. Will you guys be giving examples on how to use, for example, Iris, if a lot of your system works on Iris instead of intake?
We can do if you want some good notes on. Yeah, we can make some details available and some tutorials available on how to use Iris. But certainly the Met Office data will be CMORI's NetCDF, so you can work with it in whatever package you like. But certainly, I guess members of staff at Met Office, we typically use Iris first because that's what we're most familiar with. And so if we're writing analysis software, we'd probably use Iris. But our data should be freely accessible in any language that supports NetCDF.
But I mean, probably even for me, looking towards the hackathon, I mean, I've used XArray in that I've downloaded some code that uses XArray and then tried to figure out what structure XArray produces when you read something in. So I'll probably, you know, do some notebooks or some scripts that kind of does it side by side, Iris and XArray or something, mostly for my own benefit, but I can easily make those available just in terms of, yes, kind of, it's the names of, you know, is it structure.data or is it structure.something to access the data rather than the metadata or the other stuff that yeah, I just need to write down for myself as well to figure out how to use it. Yeah.
I think it would be helpful for everyone. I mean, until the point we get to just only one system, it would be nice to see them side by side, because you're right, there's some of us are more familiar with XArray, others are more familiar with Iris. So yeah, I think it would be great. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, Nikolai.
Maybe something a little bit more particular to my case, but now I'm trying to log in there and I already have an account, and my manager is Matt Preacher, so I probably have something from the Primavera times. Should I change this kind of things, beta to EERIE, or I can just leave with what I have so far? What would
I think that's probably fine. Don't worry too much, as long as your email address is correct and you're receiving in accounts.jasmin.ac.uk, as long as your email address is correct, then I don't think, for accounting reasons, we don't need to update information that much. As long as your email address is correct, then everything should work well.
Then I just apply for the space, for access to EERIE space to you. Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
So a small comment from my side. So if you want to do a model intercomparison, you probably should log in on the JASMIN system, because the idea is for the hackathon that we put all the let's say pre-processed data, interpolated data that already exists to JASMIN, so that we can do an intercomparison on the JASMIN system. If you have to look on the raw data, then you have to go to the place where the data is, because we have not so much space for data, and it's always better to process next to the data where the original data is.
Yeah, so I think one thing that we're going to do is to talk to the work package leaders to figure out what data would be useful, and then we can kind of do that pre-processing to a standard grid and make that available, as you say, on JASMIN. But maybe more power users want to use the raw data, and they'll then have to use different platforms to access different things. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Yeah, Steffi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I have a question, or more like, so today this, you've said, we can make an account on JASMIN, and then there's this conversation about where the data is, you'd get to know where the data is, and it's kind of preparation for the hackathon. So maybe what if it's possible before the hackathon, because it's in November, that we can all like have made an account, or it's kind of like a more simpler version of you make an account, you all have like an access to where the data is, like, so everybody's on the same page. So some of us might actually be taking the data, some of us might not be. So, people are still on different levels. So instead of that, so not on the day of the hackathon, but before that, it's kind of ticked off. So people have access to that. And maybe that's also like documented, so if someone joins in September, October, like they can just follow step by step, and, something like that.
Yes, definitely we will do that, because it can take a day or two to apply for an account to be granted. So we definitely want to make sure everyone has access to it in advance of a hackathon, because at the hackathon we will not have time to get access to accounts. So we'll definitely improve. Sorry for the noise, but we will definitely try and improve documentation and check that everyone has access before the start of the hackathon to make full use of the hackathon time.
And maybe we have these example scripts and things that people should test out before the hackathon to make sure they can do basic things. And then as you say, we're all on the same page. We're all kind of able to do the basic things, and we can actually do a bit more, something hopefully a bit more interesting when we get all together and make the best use of that time. Yeah. Okay, anyone else? Okay, well, thank you all very much. So it's all been recorded. As I said, I posted the slides, but the PDF is also available on the website. Thank you very much, John, for managing to join us. because that was very helpful to answer the trickier questions that I didn't know how to answer. And we look forward to having you back in August. And yeah, and if you have any further questions that occur to you, then just drop me an email, and I will try and answer them. In the next few months, we'll learn all about similar aspects of the DKRZ and systems and data from AVI and ICON, how to deal with those as well.
And I think Pablo also will try to do in September, right? Another one.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yes, on the using the ESGF search. Yeah, that's true. Great. Okay.
Bye-bye,
Thank you
everyone.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.